Good morning, Year 10. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. Please can you write the date and the title of letter writing. For your do now, I would like you to answer these two questions. What are the expected features of a letter, and what is the difference between formal and informal writing in a letter? Pause the video for 5 minutes to do this now. Okay, so why are we talking about letter writing? In the writing section of paper 1, which you know focuses on non-fiction texts, you may be asked to write a letter to a number of different people and for different purposes. For example, you may be asked to write to your head teacher, a newspaper editor, or a friend. In the letter, you may be asked to argue, persuade, or inform. So let's talk about letter layout. You always start with a greeting. Dear Sir or Madam, if you don't know the name, or if the name is known, dear Mr., Mrs., Ms., or just the name if it's informal. Then you have an introduction. This sets out your reason for writing. After that comes the main body. You need to organise your points to make up the body of the letter, and you put your points in order of importance. You need to aim for about 3 paragraphs at least for the main part of the letter, 1 for each point. These could be in response to comments made about a topic or some other sections. You need to address each point individually. And then finally, at the end, you need to close off your letter, and you do that with either yours faithfully, if Sir or Madam was used, or yours sincerely if you named someone specifically. Additionally, if it's an informal letter, you may want to end with something like best wishes, because it's a bit less formal. So, task 1. I'd like you to read through the letter, which you can find on class charts, which is also on this slide. And I'd like you to annotate it with all the structural features you can identify. You have 10 minutes to do this, so please start now. Okay, so these are the features that you may have picked out. So you've got a formal address suitable for a letter. Dear Mrs. Andrews. Then you've got an introduction. This part explains why they are writing to this person and who they are. After that, you've got a strong topic sentence which is very assertive. And there's an extended justification to make the point stronger. Next, you've got another start to the paragraph with a counter-argument which shows understanding. It's really helpful to have counter-arguments when you're making a point, because then it dismisses the opposition's strongest arguments. You've also got the use of discourse markers to show logical progression. You've got the use of rhetorical questions to make the audience think, and you have a summary of points to make a strong conclusion. And the letter ends on a short sentence which is powerful and effective. So if you didn't get the points on the slide, please make sure you've made a note of them now. Okay, so for argumentative writing, I'd like you to think back to Oreo. You're writing to convey your ideas, but it should be formal and polite. So top cookie, what is your goal? What is your opinion? So this is something which is really important in your speech writing too. Some of the speeches I've read recently are really amazing in terms of content, but it reads more like a discursive essay rather than a speech, which should be an argument, which should have a purpose. So letters, like speeches, are purpose-based. There is a reason behind them, and you've got to make really sure you know what exactly that reason is, and that reason is clear throughout your letter. So the creamy filling, the sweet stuff, can you give reasons and examples to support your top cookie? So you set out why you're writing the letter, and then you're giving reasons and examples to support that link back to that reason or purpose. And then finally you've got the bottom cookie. It looks a lot like the top cookie. Did you remind the reader of your opinion and call them to action? So please do make a note of that now. So what we have on this slide is some words and phrases that could help you when structuring a letter. So in terms of setting out your purpose, to begin with, I'll be the first to admit, to start off, one thing I know for sure is, I quite like to start off, I think it's very formal, but if it was an informal letter, one thing I know for sure would be very appropriate for that. Then for reasons and evidence or explanations, one reason, first of all, the reason I say this, another thought to consider, another reason, not only, but, and then for example, for instance, in fact. And then the final Oreo, your last opinion, one thing I know for sure is there is no doubt that, all in all, for these reasons. So you've got your introduction, you've got your essence, and then you've got your conclusion. Okay, so now on to our final task. I'd like you to meet Miss Maud Schleppenstick. So you've got a lovely picture of her on the slide. She is a 68-year-old villager who's very dissatisfied with the theme park being right on her doorstep. She has the following concerns: the traffic going through the village and right by her house, the littering in the areas of nature due to increased numbers of people visiting the area, youths hanging on the street corners and their rudeness, because of course all young people are rude according to Miss Maud, and the noise from the theme park. So for your main task of today's lesson, you'll be writing an informal letter from Miss Schleppenstick to a friend or relative expressing all her concerns. So it's really important to note that this is an informal letter. So dear, you wouldn't say to your friend, dear Mr., whatever. You would say, dear, and then your friend's name. Also, maybe instead of saying, yours sincerely or yours faithfully, maybe use best wishes. So just make it a bit more informal, perhaps in your language choice, in your tone, in your style. However, in terms of the format, please do stick to the format that we set out in the previous slides. So make sure you have a really clear introduction where she says she has a problem with the theme park, then have your evidence, so the reasons we've set out here, with examples, and then finish up with a summary concluding her position about the theme park. Next lesson, we'll be going to the other side, and you'll be doing a response from the theme park's perspective, and that will be a very formal letter, very factual. This one is more emotive, where the common denominator between the two letters is the clear structure that we set out in the previous slide. So please pause the video for 30 minutes to do your letter now. Okay, and that is the end of today's lesson. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable, and I look forward to seeing you in our next lesson.